Welcome to episode 8 of the Crackpot Podcast with James LaFond and Lynn Lockhart. This episode was taped on August 24th. All right, good morning, James, or good afternoon for you.
Good morning, Lynn, for you.
Thanks for joining the call.
You're welcome.
Today I thought we could continue on the theme of how the police help the bad guys. And you had prepared a nice list of stories, and some readers might be familiar with these stories because I think they have appeared in your writing, but it's always fun to hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So the first one on the list is Uncle Crush.
Oh, this is a very brief entry, I think, in my first book. We were 13, 14, and my best friend Rick, his mother Punky, was the most popular woman on earth. Even the men in her family would stop and see her. Usually their little niece before they'd even go home to their wife. She was just a real doll. This fellow was a biker. I don't think he belonged to an outlaw club or anything. He's just a big guy that rode a bike and wore the attire. He was coming home from 6 months in prison, and he decided to stop off at Punky's first, and I was introduced to him. And he really impressed us young twerps, and he could tell Rick and I had already been in puberty for a couple of years. We were physically men, and he told us what it was going to be like by way of explaining how he ended up doing 6 months in prison. He was leaving a bar. Now, this guy was in his mid-50s, probably about 6'4", 250. He had straight gray hair that came down to his shoulders. And these two young guys approached him, and there were words, I don't know what it was about. They attacked him. One of them was his size, one of them was smaller. They were wearing leather Letterman's jackets, high school or college, whatever. He broke the one guy's jaw, and the other guy, he broke his ribs. And when the guy that he smashed up against the wall, breaking his ribs, he grabbed him by the front part of the leather jacket, used that to sling him against the wall, and then he ripped the jacket off the guy's back. So actually tore this leather jacket in half over the guy's back, and he ends up with like two pieces of leather jacket.
Wow.
So he was an unusually strong guy. He gets arrested, and he ends up doing 6 months in prison because these were rich boys. These were the people that the police are there to protect, not him. So, he just let us know that when you mix it up with two guys, things are more than likely going to go against you. So try not to get in that situation, even if you feel like you can take these guys.
All right.
Because the law is going to come down on their side. And I know the magistrates were pretty corrupt in that part of Pennsylvania, which I benefited from.
Oh, is that where you...
That magistrate took a $450 payoff, so I could go.
Do you want to talk about that?
No, not to.
All right.
That was it. It went the other way with this fellow because he was a biker. I was the son of a not a big businessman, but a minor businessman, a guy that managed a print shop. So He was somebody. My dad belonged to the Kiwanis Club and a Rotary International, and if you're not one of these kind of people, things are going to go against you when you have to deal with 2 or more attackers.
Mm-hmm. Well, next on the list is Big Nate.
Okay. About 6'5", probably 340, something like that. He had straight brown hair. In the face, he didn't look like he should be as big as he was, but he was really big. His wife and 2 of her girlfriends just wanted to go out and get drunk and not have to worry about a bunch of guys trying to have sex with them. So he was elected to be the chaperone. He drove them. He just drank water and soft drinks, and he was walking them out to their car. And these 3 rednecks, and now Nate was a redneck, these 3, little beta squib rednecks were following the girls out, saying disgusting things to them, angry that these cute girls came out and didn't want to have sex with them. And one of the girls is touched. I forget which one. It might have been his wife. He ends up destroying these guys, and it was a little bit of overkill. I think he actually punched one guy in the groin. So he's like a 350-pound dude punching this 150-pound guy in the balls. And he ends up doing he ends up spending the weekend in jail. His brother ran a supermarket. He had decent money, and he ended up being fined and being put on probation, which amounted to him and I becoming closer friends, because if he was going to go out and get a drink with somebody, it needed to be somebody like me that would always avoid the fight and be able to talk us out of situations. And I did that. He never even went a couple of times when people wanted to start with him, because real big guys will get a lot of challenges. Because it's a win-win for the little guy. If he gets beat up, oh, well, that giant guy beat me up.
Yeah.
But, I'm a man because I'm stupid. So that's Nate. That's another example of successfully defending yourself against a group of aggressors. And the only reason why he gets off with probation and damages for whatever he did to these people was because he had 3 female witnesses.
Ah, that's helpful.
If he'd have been by himself, and one of these guys had a woman with him, he could have ended up doing time. So that was a case where if you have a reliable woman with you, one, you probably have cause to hurt somebody because she could be in danger. And the other one is you have backup, and it depends on what kind of girl you have with you. My favorite female for being out and about and just feeling like I had a guaranteed support system there is a girl named Megan. And she knows not to try to get physical with guys, and she knows I can take care of myself, and she knows what to say. She's not going to start screaming at the cops, calling them pigs like other girls that I've dated that hated cops. She's not going to melt down. She's not such a girly girl. She's just going to melt down and turn into this quivering ball of painted flesh. So you want to make sure you're with the right kind of chick when you do decide to defend yourself. You absolutely do not want to be with a yuppie or a hipster chick. You don't want to be with any type of upper middle class woman if you've got to fight somebody, because she's liable to just get you killed or injured and arrested. On top of that, she's going to do all the wrong things at the wrong time because she thinks she has moral authority, which she does not have in contact situation.
Interesting. Next is Vance. And this one's really hair-raising. I know this story.
Oh, okay. He's my oldest son, 5'8", 130 pounds. This kid's, even now, he's 41. He's drinking protein drinks every day. He can't get over 135 pounds. He would have been a boxing coach's dream. He could have fought this guy in 120-pound range for his, whole span of his career. But he's going down to the liquor store. He's 16. He's working for the local bakery, and he's going down to get his schedule at the bakery, which is right next to Ham's liquor store, where he buys his cigarettes. So, which I did not encourage this behavior, but he smoked, and all of his friends smoked. A group of 5 attack him when he leaves the liquor store. They manage to get his hat. They don't get his wallet. I forget the fate of the cigarettes. He hit one of them, ran away. They followed him. He tells his 2 friends, Jesse and Josh, I think, about this. Well, these guys are tough guys. They go and find these guys and chase them. They chase them back to their neighborhood. Well, problem is they're not all guys. There's a chick in this crew. So that means humiliation, loss of street cred. That's got to be gotten back. There's a dozen of this mixed race hood rats, probably about 20% Caucasian. In front of my house, I wake up, I hear a crash, and I didn't have any clothes on. It was really hot. Didn't have an air conditioner. I get up and I look out the window. My face smashes into the window, and I could see that there's a whole gang of people out there. My 5-year-old boy is pushing his police car around in the yard, pretending like he's going to arrest these bad boys. My wife is just panicking on the porch, yelling, "Get out!" The woman who thinks that she's got moral authority. So I grabbed my Bowie knife and I walked downstairs, but I'd only been asleep for about 45 minutes because I had chewed him and his friends out for making noise in front of the house. I didn't realize they were hanging out in front of the house because he was afraid to go anywhere. He didn't want to get attacked by a bunch of people. And I ended up stumbling down the stairs, and I crashed into the storm door, which gets Jesse to turn around. He sees that I'm there naked, about to humiliate myself coming out of the house like this. So he just turns around and beats up this one kid that's attacking people with a stick, and then they all run away. And I know they're going to be back because there's a big fat white girl and this tall, nasty black girl, and they're screaming all these obscenities. So I actually bought a Jobola wood stick for $36 down at the Warrior Emporium. I got this Ukrainian guy to give me a ride home. I picked up Glenn from school. I brought him home. I told Vance not to leave the front of the house. He's standing out there on the sidewalk. And I go upstairs to get a shower. And then my youngest son, Glenn, says, "They're back." So I told him, "Call the police." And I go downstairs with this baton. There's the 2 biggest boy, the biggest white boy, the biggest black boy. There's one of the girls. I forget if it was the white chick or the black chick. And there's these 2 black men in their mid to late 20s. The one guy's got a scar on his face. These guys look like they're right out of prison. Either one of them would have been tough for me to deal with. Vance is just frozen in fear. He's not a fighter. One's got a brick. One's got a bottle, I think. So I immediately thought to myself, okay, well, I try to get to one of these guys. The other one could, knock me in the head with a weapon. So I got inside. I have this old, ancient 20-gauge shotgun that I've got 2 shells. So I put one in. I didn't even bring the second one with me. So I have 1 shell. It's this dove and quail shot. If you stick it in somebody's mouth, it can maybe blow half their head off, but you're not going to kill anybody with it, unless you do that. I come out there with that thing, and they didn't leave. I was like, okay. I said something unfortunate. Okay, it was a racial thing. It was one of the only times I've ever used this word. And I said, "How many of you," and I used the N-word, "want to die today?" And I'm starting to go psycho. I can feel this happening. And as my neighbor's wife, she was this beautiful woman. I think she was a paralegal or something. At this very time, she's walking up to her porch, which is like she's going to pass 2 feet from me, and I'm standing there with a shotgun. She's walking up there with 2 bags of groceries, and she's black. And she says, "Not me." And she drops the groceries on the porch, and she darts inside. And then one kid threatened to burn my house down, and I went whack job. And I remember trying to get to him and shove the muzzle of this in his mouth so I could blow his head off and then beat the rest of him with a pipe. I hear the cop across the street, who's retired, Dave the cop. He screams, "Don't do it, Jim!" And then they all run, and then I'm an idiot, and I tell them when I go to work, what bus stop I use, when I get off work, where they can find me, because I just want them to attack me somewhere away from the house, not to deal with us again. Well, about 45 minutes later, a police officer finally rolls up. And my youngest son has already told me, he said, "Daddy, I've been on the phone with these people, but they're not too smart." And he said, they won't do anything until I can spell the name of our street to them. And I keep on telling them, I'm only 5 years old. I don't know how many S's are in this name. I think it was Leursssen. I think that's how you spelled the name of that street we lived on. And about 45 minutes later, the cop shows up.
Wow.
Short, tubby little guy who I could have wrung his neck in a couple of seconds. All he's interested in is running a check on my son and me.
Yeah.
To see if we have warrants out on us, to see if we have a record. Numerous people called. Somebody probably called about a gun, too, so I can understand him checking on me. He was not interested about this gang of people that 2 days in a row tried to break into this house.
Right.
Was not interested at all. I couldn't even talk to him about it. And he ended up, my youngest son liked him so much. He was really into police officers. He's showing him his police car, Tonka police car and everything like that. So they got along okay, but the cop and I didn't get along. I pretty much glared at him. He pretty much looked at me like he was afraid his diaphragm was ill-fitted or something like that, and it was going to end badly. So there we go. That was that situation. And
yeah. So
that's away. By the way,
I'm sorry.
I decided I would rely on swords.
Oh. Oh man, that's a crazy story.
So that's when you're food.
Yeah.
And I would feel terrible when I said that, and then my neighbor took it personally and said, "Not me," and she starts. I think her egg was it.
She sounds like she kind of could understand what was going on, though.
Yeah, she had a better background. I mean, her and her husband escaped from a bad area. They both came from bad areas. They got good jobs. They moved to a nice area.
Yeah.
White people went away, and then Section 8 people start coming in, and the neighborhood becomes dangerous because they're afraid of this engineer and his paralegal wife.
All right. Well, your next story here is called Haynes.
Oh, Haynes. Okay, I think I might use his real name. His name was Stephen Hines, because he should be retired now. He worked for CSX Railroad. He was a Golden Gloves boxer. He was from the Carolinas. He was also a Taekwondo black belt. He's in that size range of really effective aggressors. 5'10", 5'11", about 230 pounds. Dark-skinned black man with huge hands. Okay, so this is a guy that knows how to hit. Once, when he was a boy, he was attacked by a man in the alley. He had just moved to Baltimore as a teenager. He's attacked by a man in the alley. He picks up a 2x4, he splits the guy's head open, and he ends up getting put in reform school. Okay, so for this. He ends up singing in a cover band, it was old Motown stuff. And one time he comes out of he's the last guy in the band coming out of the nightclub, and he didn't realize that he had been marked. There was chalk on his back. Somebody marked him. These two guys, big muscular guy grabbed him from behind. Little guy was in front. I forget if the little guy had a knife or not. The important thing is Haynes had a knife. He pulls it out. He stabs this brother in the thigh with this knife. He kicks the guy in front of him, and that guy just goes away. When you're 150 pounds and a heavyweight kicks you in the chest, it usually takes the wind out of your sails. So that guy runs, leaves the big guy, and Haynes says, I I love getting interviews from old black guys about stuff like that. And he said, I was writing my name on his black ass. He said, he thinks of me every time he takes a bath to this day. I just know it. So he's punishing this guy, doing all these scarifications on him with his lock plate. His friends come up and they pull him off, and he's like, I'm cool. And they let him go, and he reverses it into an ice pick grip, and he runs in there and he stabs the guy because he's so ticked off. So they take his knife off of him. And he's like, I'm cool. Mm-hmm. And then they let him go, and he pulls out a linoleum knife because his side job at the time was like installing linoleum floors and carpets. And he takes that knife out, and he starts cutting this guy up. And then his friends drag him off of him. So he's got an aggressive personality.
Yikes.
Once you attack him. And he was a family man. He worked for CSX Railroad, and he would take the number 1 bus all the way from Lawrence and Fort Avenue out North Charles Street. This is like a 12-mile haul all the way out of Baltimore, deep into the county where he had a nice house where his daughter and his wife lived. And he's standing on the corner with professional white people. Now, this man is in his 50s. He's just got off work. He's wearing a CSX railroad uniform. He's standing next to these people that work in the office buildings uptown who, that live in a neighborhood. The average individual income's like $100,000 a year. He can't afford to live here. He works down here. Mm-hmm. 3 teenage black boys who aren't from the neighborhood, because there were no black people that lived in South Baltimore at the time, came through looking for somebody to rob, and they pick him. Because at the time, if you're a black person and you touch a white person in South Baltimore, that's why those cops are there. They're going to jack you up. That was an old-style enclave policing right there. There's only 4 or 5 cops on that detail, but they were there to protect this huge tax base against people that might come in, and it was kind of easy. There was only a couple ways. The Hanover Street Bridge and the Ostend Street Bridge are basically the only ways you can get from these ghettos across the railroad tracks, and the other one across the Patapsco River onto this peninsula. So there's one of them's almost his size, and the other 2 are smaller, and they come up to him and they decide to rob him. They just tell him, old man, give us what you got. Well, he just decks one of them. Mm-hmm. So he punched him, and that's pretty much the end of that guy. Then he puts this other one in a headlock, and he's dragging this guy around with him while he's trying to punch the third one.
Wow.
2 cops show up, and they arrest him. They don't do anything to these kids.
Wow.
The kids are free to go. Kids are victims. He's got 3 or 4 people. These people even missed their bus and were late for work to stand there and talk to the cops and say, hey, these kids tried to rob him.
Yeah.
These knew he was a stand-up guy, that he was a working guy. But there's that thing where cops, unless it's a super cop that's playing concrete football and tackling bad guys, most of them are just wimps that became a cop to make up for that and get an easy 20-year retirement. Being a cop might be a nasty job, but you only have to do it for 20 years, and then you get a pension for life. So these are the kind of guys that they're going to resent a dude like this, because none of these cops could take out 3 hood rats.
Right.
So there's this base resentment. The judge ended up throwing it out. The judge got angry with the arresting officer in this case.
Oh, that's something.
Okay, so, fortunately, you still had conservative judges sitting on the bench back then in the late 90s.
Yeah.
I don't have those in Baltimore City anymore. So that's another example of the cops literally rescuing these 3 thug kids from a guy that was just defending himself. And he was certainly defending the people around him, because these could have done nothing to protect themselves.
Yeah.
A couple of big black men who have moved into white neighborhoods, and they've taken upon themselves to patrol the neighborhood and try to protect the sissy white people, from the hood rat that are going to come in, because they know they're coming.
Yeah.
And they know that the people that they moved to be neighbors with don't understand what's coming and don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, they might also be inhibited because of the cultural and political climate too. I mean,
these days, yes, but
yeah.
the last one of these guys I saw was 2 years ago, and I just I think he might be on the list. Okay, so we
Right.
can go on, but this is a thing where some decent physical black guys that know that a lot of their friends when they were growing up used to pick on white people because white people wouldn't fight back. They'll try to make up for that oftentimes if they're the neighbor of white people who they think can't defend themselves.
Yeah.
So it's in a way it's a racialist way of thinking, because it's still sticking with this idea. Well, I'm going to police my own. I'm not going to let any of my people attack you people because you people are my friends.
Right. Yeah, and they just might have I don't know. It might just work better that way,
Yeah.
that,
And it's no longer common. It was common at one time.
yeah.
I had numerous black bus drivers when I first moved to Baltimore and started taking the bus who just tried to talk me out of getting off at certain stops. And the question was, you going to see your grandma? Because that's the thing. The only reason why a white dude would be going down to this neighborhood at night would be to check on his grandmother who's stuck in a house down there after the ghetto. And then when I'd say no, they would just shake their head like, But so there's that. I have some bus drivers do it now. They'll look out for me. So
That's nice. The next person on your list is Crazy Mark.
he's basically a feral human being. I think the black kids called him Sasquatch.
Mm-hmm.
And they would throw bricks at him. They would attack him with weapons and everything. But he lived in basements, and some of the black guys called him Porch because he used to live on porches and under porches. And when he was younger, he would actually rob old people. He was not a good guy. He did 14 years for armed robbery.
Oh, wow.
He smoked PCP when he was a teenager, and then he smoked PCP constantly when he was in prison. Get any drug he wanted in prison. So when he got out, when I met him, he didn't blink, never blinked. I never recall this guy blinking. We have a work history together that I don't have to go through from earlier, but I had been his supervisor and had fired him numerous times, 25 years before, or 20 years before I met him again, when he was actually trying to get on the bus to attack these black kids who had planned on getting off the bus to go into the store that I managed and trash it and just run through and grab as much stuff as they could, because they knew it would only be my daytime counterpart there.
Oh.
So I was taking the bus into town behind them. I was going to get off the bus behind them and follow them up to the vestibule, and I would lock them into the vestibule from one end, and he'd lock them into the vestibule from the other end. That's what I do. But then, as the bus is pulling over and these kids are getting ready to pile off, one of them's like, "Oh shit, yo, Sasquatch be coming." Okay, and Mark is with his bomber jacket. He's running across the street like a gigantic. He ran kind of like Jason Statham does in his movies. He's got a funny way of running, but a much bigger guy. So it looks really almost like the Hunchback of Notre Dame or something.
Oh, man.
And he's running. He's got this big bushy beard. He's like a mountain man that lives in the city. He's about 6'4", 220, extremely hard and muscular guy. When you bumped into this guy, it was really like bumping into a piece of hanging beef. And he's screaming at him. He's calling them nigglets. Okay, I'm gonna get you, you nigglets. And he's beating on the bus door. I get off the back door. And the one kid's telling the other kid, "Yo, you shouldn't have hit Sasquatch with a brick, man. He's thinking that shit personal." So I get off there, and he sees the tie. He immediately knows who I am. He doesn't know I'm the guy that fired him, because when I did that, I was a long-haired hippie, and I was skinny. But now that I had no hair in the management pot belly and tie, he didn't recognize me. And he said, "Oh, you're the man." He said, "They hate you around here." He said, "But I could help you out."
Uh-huh.
And eventually this turns into me just giving him $20 either to get his shoes shined, which usually meant that he had hood rat juice on one or more of his boots. The three different fluids that can come out of a hood rat face were sometimes one of his boots. And one Christmas, it was between Christmas and New Year's, he came in one night when I was building Libby's canned vegetable display. So it must have been before Christmas instead of after.
Maybe Thanksgiving.
And he's showing me these teeth indentations in his knuckles where you can see the tendons in the flesh.
Ew.
Where he's been punching people in the teeth, and he said, I was fighting 5 of these guys out in, across the street. After that, I told him that 3 of my clerks had been robbed. One of them had beat up and robbed 3 times.
Wow.
Leaving the store after dark, and Mr. Jimmy, or they called him Old Man Jimmy, this guy had face cancer, and he's out in the alley fighting 3 hood rats who have bats. He managed to get to work. His whole face was black. His hands were black from defending himself. He got arrested.
Wow.
Okay. He got to work enough time to tell me what happened, and the cops are already looking for him. Okay. So this guy, for defending himself against a couple of young men. 3 of them with bats beat him at one time, and then nothing happened. But then he got attacked by 2 of them, and one of them was a healthy adult buck that he was actually duking it out with. And Jimmy gets arrested because the buck hood rat has a whelp hood rat as a witness.
Mm.
So I told Mark about this. I told him where my guys were getting hit, where the approaches were. Well, he got his money by vacuuming out basements of vacant houses, and he would look for the change, and he would go up to the vacuum cleaner thing at the car wash, a 24-hour car wash, and root through the dustbin and get change out of that. He would scoop out the gutters, and he would collect cans and take them down to the recycle place and get a little bit of money. That's where he got his money from. The cops eventually ran him away from the store because of this scrounging activity he was doing. And eventually I told him, I said, look, if you need help sometime, let me know. I get off the bus at the diner. You could see me up there sometime, but the cops are looking for you around here, and I don't think we should have you patrolling the area anymore. Oh. The last time I saw him, Megan and I were stopping up at the liquor store, and she's outside in the car. I go in, I come out, I hear something outside. I see this big old Buick rattling down Belair Road, and Mark is getting on this bicycle that I think was a battle prize that he took from some hood rat or something, and he's chasing this car on his bike. I'm like, what is this? She said, well, I just had to save these 2 old black people from your friend from Crazy Mark, because he was coming out of Kenwood Avenue, and they were doing about 35 down Belair Road, and they hit him broadside.
Oh.
He's riding on rims because his tires are blown out on his bicycle. He actually got thrown across the road. He gets hit he goes off the hood and the windshield of this thing. And these people wanted to check and see if he was okay. And she told him, she said, no, get back in the car and drive.
Oh, man.
Okay, because he's not reasonable when it comes to people of your race. Okay, you're probably in trouble. So the last I see of Crazy Mark, he's chasing this old black couple in a Buick, which is all busted up because they plowed into his big ass. And he's on this busted up bike that they ran over trying to catch them. I'm sure there's no way he caught them. But it gives you an idea how tough the guy is.
Yeah.
He's like a caveman. I think there was a sighting of him 2.5 years ago, but I haven't seen him. So who knows? He could be in prison. He could be dead. I don't know. But the cops were looking for him. They would help me protect the store and Mark protect the store, but when it came to patrolling the neighborhood, the only thing that they were worried about was this guy that was cleaning out basements and was caught on camera going through the dustbin at the vacuum cleaner at the car wash, not the gangs of guys that were attacking my employees. And when he would fight with these guys, the cops would come after him and they would arrest him. They would release him. They would say, look, you can't fight. You're too old to fight. You can't. And he's like, I can fight. I won, But, about his reasoning level.
Yeah.
So you have this guy, this lost soul, that he's got one thing that's a reasonable function that he could accomplish.
Yeah.
If the merchants in the area could have just pitched in and let him sleep in a room somewhere, and give him a few bucks and give him some food, he could have basically assured this whole corridor for about a mile was going to be safe for ordinary pedestrians.
It's really amazing. Yeah, that one guy could do that.
Well, he essentially did do it.
Yeah.
And he got by the police because he did other stuff that was nuisance stuff. He didn't do any breaking and entering or anything like that at the time. That was stuff he did when he was younger. But the cops had a hard on for him because they knew who he was. They knew he did 14 years, and they just can't wait to lock a guy like this back up.
Yeah.
But he was already like 50, 51. And he's living this life. Yeah, he was crazy. The first thing he did when he got out of prison was he killed and ate his mother's pet squirrels that she had trained. He'd come up on the porch and eat out of his hand. And he did declare to me in front of the entire night crew, which was all black. He's waving his knife around because he's showing me the squirrel fur from skinning these squirrels. And I got a bunch of pretty civilized black guys working for me. And he's like, hey, boss, you know what season it is? I'm like, no, Mark, no. And he tells me what season it is. And these guys don't get angry. They get scared.
Yeah.
So I took him back room when I came back out. And then the Jamaican guy said, look, man, us, him, without you, never schedule him to be here when you're not here, or else we're all dead. So even a guy that's a psychopath and he just no wonder he hated black people because he came from Blair Edison, which was a neighborhood that got completely overrun by black people, and it remained predatory to this day. I had a friend that taught karate down there. He got run out of there. A friend that owned a house. It got robbed every day when he went to work. And that was a neighborhood that Oliver used to drive out of, and he would get in trouble with the cops just for being a black guy that wasn't afraid of anybody. Mark came out of that neighborhood. He was a criminal to begin with. He gets thrown in prison for doing something he deserved to go to prison for. And the prison's all run by these black gangs. Well, he doesn't get victimized. His solution is he's going to be the predator. He comes back out on the street and he moves back in with his mother like a year before she passed away. And now she's the last white person in the neighborhood. Mm. So he's got this Fort Apache mentality, and he's got gangs of young guys that are hunting him like he's Humbaba, and they're Gilgamesh and Enkidu, and they're going to go out and hunt the big monster. So it was a weird situation, but it does illustrate that the municipality doesn't place much value on people being protected. They place value on the force that's used to protect people being under their control, which usually means it's not available to protect people because it's being used for other things.
All right.
Fighting a drug or whatever.
And there's so much talk about rehabilitation for criminals and stuff like that, and recidivism, and there a lot of, if you're a guy like Mark, you're not going to just come and fit back into society. You have to have this. Well, he was lucky enough to be able to find this niche, but it wasn't sustainable.
Well, I think it would be a good policy if I was king.
Yeah.
Violent criminals that no longer wanted to commit crimes and wanted to be accepted by society, you could just, employ them as neighborhood vigilantes.
Yeah.
And be vigilant and go out there and knock heads, make sure no old ladies get mugged.
Yeah.
And then that way the cops can do what they want to do, which is concentrate on vice crimes. and drug crimes. They don't want to do any deterrence either because it's really difficult to do. You get a guy on the ground do it.
Yeah.
That would be reasonable.
That would, yeah.
It's never going to happen in this society.
No. But because it also takes a special type of person who can manage that guy, You could do it. You were doing it, but not everybody could manage him like that, especially, like you described between him and the Black Knight crew. To keep the peace in that situation, that takes a special kind of diplomacy.
He hated the Jewish baker also. He told the Jewish baker that he was going to throw him in the ovens.
Oh, I wonder if he's blogging now in the alt-right.
So he had some issues. But the thing is, even a guy like that, once they pass 40 or 45 years old, what they really want is what they never had. They want a daddy figure, even if it's a guy that's younger than them. If it's a guy that has local financial power, if it's a guy that could give them $20 when they need it, or maybe get them a job cleaning out a house or washing cars or cutting grass or something like that. Just a guy that they could trust, because guys that have been through prison don't trust authority figures, because a lot of the authority figures they deal with are really duplicitous. That just the DOJ numbers from 2013 on juvenile offenders being raped by corrections officers, for instance. Mark was in that system when he was a teenager.
Yeah.
So that's like a fantasy to have for a guy that didn't have a father and got screwed by all the authorities in whatever system he was stuck in. For him to just be able to form a relationship with, let's say, the head of the neighborhood association. There's a guy in Hamilton who's the head of the neighborhood association who went into his pocket and hired an off-duty Baltimore City cop that worked through the overtime program. So he's still uniformed, and he's not off-duty. He's technically on duty. He went into his pocket for that. Well, that's the kind of guy that could, in the absence of that, and there is the absence of that now because the police are so understaffed that this overtime desk is not being used as much for private purposes because they need those hours for the regular police work. Somebody like Mark would be okay for that. The Pakistani guys do that to buy up these liquor stores. Mm-hmm. They hire their private security guys, and nobody messes with them. Right. You won't. Criminals see a guy like that. There's this guy that looks like Arnold looked in the Terminator movie that is the doorman at just a regular neighborhood packaged good bar, but it does good business and it caters to middle-class black guys, which means they're afraid of somebody coming in there and wasting them. They're afraid now of having a good time and having some other dude come in and shoot them from the criminal class. So they spent the money to hire this guy who works in body armor in a black tactical suit. He's got the 9mm strapped to his thigh like the tactical guys use. He frisks everybody who comes through the door. He looks like a middle linebacker in the NFL. Flat top crew cut. So foreign people immediately, when they start a business in a place like Baltimore, they'll either do that or they'll make sure that their sons and their cousin are on duty there. At nighttime hours and liquor stores owned by Pakistanis, Indians, or Sikhs, they got all the men in the family are there on deck. And if you come in with a gun, your back's to somebody. And they'll set them up that way. American people don't understand how to do business like that, at least not the kind of American people I've known.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah, but these guys get it. Yeah. Got a tactical solution here. Come up with a solution. Inchon John, who basically got run out of business because of the crime, the best solution he could come up with is there's a former boxer that he used to stock his coolers and also hang around. And, essentially be his bodyguard, but that's not enough to deal with a couple of guys with guns coming into your place. So he's got to sell to the Sikhs because this guy, and I'll tell you, you talk about beard envy, this Sikh patriarch that owns this liquor store, this thing's like a tie. He could tuck his beard in his belt. He's got 3 sons and a cousin to help him run that place. Okay, so you need numbers. and you need weapons.
Yeah.
Once it gets to that extremity.
Well, speaking of weapons, the next item is the pink assault rifle.
Okay. Well, this is direct cops saving hood rat bacon. Okay. This is okay. Some guy that's not real smart, and this happened about the time where I did the Dindu Down article that got tweeted by this guy that ended up getting burned by Twitter. Okay.
Oh.
Ricky, I think was there.
Yeah.
He retweeted it. And that was an interview with this older black man who was making coffee while he was watching this idiot shoot it out with the cops behind his apartment complex, okay? And he's like, oh, he's dead. He's dead. They let him up, okay? So not far from there. I think this is maybe not far from Landville. On the front of the website, if you look at those 3 photos of the criminal activity of the oppressed.
Yeah, I'm looking at them.
There's me and mini me with the big dog and the little dog. Okay.
Yeah.
Then there's the 3 guys over off of Liberty Heights that are looking away from the Google Earth camera.
Mm-hmm.
Then.
Oh, is that's a Google Earth picture?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they probably didn't know what Google Earth was. They probably thought it was like 5.0. You know. So there's a few of those photos in the photo package.
Okay.
Yeah, so you imagine being that Google car driver. Some of the places they went, it was like being on safari. Now, and that one was funny. There were some that were scarier than that.
Yeah.
It's just 3 guys that look like they could be Evander Holyfield's brothers standing around in these crisp white shirts. Every one of them's got a hand in their pocket, and they're in the middle of a side street with well-manicured lawns. So, you know, so that was really creepy. This one was kind of funny. Well, the other one is the 4 hood rats that are doing business. You could see the kid that's walking up with the money. You could see the dude that's got the gun. You could see the shot caller. And then there's another guy, I think, sitting on the stairs or something.
Yeah,
there's 4 of them.
and
there's probably that you don't see on film. That was down, I think, on Landvale Street off of York Road. And this incident I'm about to tell you about was right around the corner from there. There's some tactical drug task force cops that are staking out these guys. And they're going to try to make a drug bust on these guys. And this dude and his son have decided to kill these guys.
Mm.
I don't know if it's a beef over a woman, what it is, if it was a rival drug gang, whatever. But this guy shows up with his son and a pink assault rifle to gun these guys down. And it just so happens that there's like 2 carloads of tactical cops right there, and they hose this guy down.
Oh, wow.
Okay. You have a thing right there where instead of protecting women that are trying to get out of a supermarket who are the victims of purse snatchers, okay, and aggressive panhandlers, and instead of trying to make sure any street where old ladies had to stand on buses, you know, like my friend Megan, her daughter Nikki, the 2 ladies that work as receptionists in the office at the legal firm she works at, they're black women who have been beaten up on bus stops in black neighborhoods in broad daylight.
Yeah.
Instead of cops paying any attention to this, they're out there doing what the government wants them to do. They're protecting criminals from criminals.
Mm.
They're involved in this 3-sided drug war. And that's what they're doing. They're the murders that the mayor will generally press to get investigated. It's all these hood rats. It's some guy that's a known drug dealer that probably shot somebody who's getting shot in the head from 2 feet away by a guy that he used to do business with who's now trying to take over his business. Mm. This is the kind of stuff they're investigating. And the witnesses aren't even cooperating.
All right.
The police getting into their business. But the police are still there trying to protect these people. It happened over on Harford Road near Hugo and St. Lo Drive and Lake Montebello, and it was a few months ago. You had cops running up and down the street trying to respond to shootings and just getting in there in time to clean up the mess. They were actually out trying to prevent shootings between these groups of people.
Yeah.
Why not let these idiots kill each other?
Yeah. Well, that's, we talked about the crime statistics, and the murders are the only ones that they can't falsify, right? Because if you have a dead body, you have a dead body. So that's the one they should work hardest on, because that's the one that they can't.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. It's just that. There was a 90-year-old woman who was raped by 2 teenagers in her house. She lived in a bad neighborhood, but, it's the house she had.
Yeah.
It wasn't a bad neighborhood when she moved in there.
Yeah.
60 years ago.
Right.
And it's right down by Druid Hill Park. And she called the police out, and she called the news station. She never saw anything on the news, and she never saw anything in the newspaper. She couldn't find anything in a police blotter that even recognized that this had been done to her. She walked down to the TV station. I think it was WJZ-TV, and she demanded to talk to somebody so that this would be heard about. So there's nothing for that. There's no worry about this. There's no concern that old ladies are actually being beat up on their way back and forth to work, that they're being raped in their houses, that most white people can't even walk down the street after 5 o'clock in the afternoon, that even though it's not getting dark until 8:30 or 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
The witching hour is already at wintertime level.
Really?
Yeah. You've already got, and it's going to get worse once school gets back in, because that packs them all up into their units, into their straight teams, and then they spread out at 3 o'clock, 2:30, 3 o'clock when they get out of school, and it's rape and pillage on the street until 5 o'clock. But already, you've already got nighttime behavior, broad daylight attacks in the evening when it's daylight, at a time when it's going to be dark in 4 months.
Yeah.
And this is time, the reason for this is because this is when the prey is out, because people are coming home from work. And you're better off hitting them coming home from work than you are when they're coming out of their house in the morning. For one thing, you can't stay up until 6 o'clock in the morning playing your video games if you're going to hit them when they're coming out of their house.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, man.
You have a question there, young lady?
No, the last one.
I haven't depressed you, have I?
No, it's just, I don't know what to say. It's awful.
Oh. Well, I think it's good fodder for my writing. I'm right here. I feel like a war correspondent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, you were talking about the Sikhs and how they manage their liquor stores, and the Sikhs that's their whole purpose in life, is to be ready for a war against them.
They are, and I really like the way they treat you.
Yeah.
That's the Pakistanis and the Indians are mostly pricks. That buy the liquor stores, except for their wives. Their wives are usually dolls. Okay, I guess they can't wait to talk to a dude that's not going to slap them. But the Sikhs, you never see their women wherever they are. Okay? I guess so. They're locked up somewhere, and they're very respectful of older men.
Yeah, that's something that I find it very saddening that we don't have that, just respect for older people in general.
Our society is designed to get the opposite result.
Yeah.
You're supposed to shove your old people in an old age home.
Yeah.
Which means they get preyed upon by the people that work.
By the minimum wage staff that. Yeah.
But usually what the Sikhs will do is the oldest son is in charge of the security detail. You could tell what he's looking for. The youngest son will do the customer service. So he'll come out and say, sir, can I help you? And the patriarch is a step back, and he's watching all the sons, and if you're an older man, then he'll give you some kind of greating. That's,
it's kind of nice, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. And it's amazing that we don't have anything comparable. And maybe that's why these people are coming over here, because they're filling a void. We don't have business or family social structures that can sustain themselves in a dangerous environment.
Yeah. That's a big, I think we can save that too for another talk. I mean, the whole, yeah. Well, we have Z-Man, Skittle, and Michael Brown as chains of events expressing the suppression of proximate force via proxy force. I think the Z-Man Skittle story is just like the perfect story, and it illustrates perfectly how the media could just turn it upside down. The whole story just could be presented in a completely false way.
Yeah, that was the biggest bamboozle as far as news misreporting.
Yeah.
I saw the person that did the best job on it was Stefan Molyneux. Actually, probably his best piece was his truth about, Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman. And it was completely misreported by the press, but it was really done, whether consciously or unconsciously, to enable this whole system that just rolled out with that.
Yeah.
It has just snowballed. So your neighborhood watch guy, who apparently was an idiot, the Zimmerman guy,
he was,
seemed to be
yeah,
the sharpest tool in the shed.
No.
But he's being beaten to death by this kid, and then the kid sees he's got a gun, and now the kid's going for the gun. So now this guy's got to go for his gun too, and kid dies, and the whole way it was misrepresented. But the idea, this is probably also the place where the Chuck Norris rule comes into effect really strongly, is that the media took the ethos and the operating ethics of that ethos from the African-American urban population that says lethal force is unreasonable when you're just being beaten to a pulp.
All right.
Okay, because it's a whole society where these children are brutalized as children, and everybody gets beaten up. And you also had the cops used to recreationally beat up the black men, and then you have the black women beating up all the children, and then the children growing up and beating each other. A beating in the ghetto was never anything to get upset about. And that norm has actually, with that case, that norm was extended via the media to the whole American body politic. Has adopted this Chuck Norris rule, this ridiculous thing that even if you're in fear for your life, even if you're enforcing a law, even if you're defending your home or your property, even if you're being attacked and you're the defender, you cannot respond with any greater force than what is being used against you.
Yeah, as though you can make some very fine-tuned judgment, in that moment of, oh, well, no, it's not time to get the gun out yet. We have to wait for a few more.
And the fact is, if you're armed and you lose the empty-handed thing, well, that's a disaster. Now Absolutely. They have a gun. So if you have a weapon and you're attacked, you really have to use it, because if you don't, then it might end up being their weapon. But it really goes back to the fact that society or that segment of society, because it's not even a community, is mutual combat was just never punished unless somebody died. And then that's an after effect. Nobody that ever cared if two black dudes beat each other up or if some black woman beat her child. Nobody cared.
Right.
People still stand and watch this stuff on the street.
Right.
And I've watched it in supermarkets. People don't care. And that's actually spread up. And now that's our ethos now.
Yeah.
You know, and it rolls on with the Michael Brown thing, where this guy actually beat the cop and then came back to get him again.
Yeah, and this goes back to the whole concept of like the witness, the accomplice or the witness, because all of a sudden you have people around the corner who were looking out their windows and they just saw that he had his hands up the whole time and
Hey,
you know,
there was a video that was on YouTube for a while that was taken from a smartphone where this guy was explaining to the girl that was taking the video that man was charging the police. And you could see where Michael Brown had fallen forward facing the cop car.
Yeah.
And he's saying that man was charging the police. Now, but because of the way the system is, by the way, the police helicopter, well, it's 2:08 in the afternoon. The police helicopter's already up and over the house. The knee-jerk reaction of the felon that he was traveling with, part of the reason why these guys always travel in packs is so that you have a built-in witness for whatever your situation is.
Right.
I mean, it's ridiculous. I'll have guys come into a store with an empty bag and then go fill it up, and they will swear on a stack of Bibles that they came into the store with this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, just 10 bars of soap or whatever it is. So the default is just to lie as blatantly as possible. And with our system of gathering information after the fact to try to find out who's to blame, that lies can be really powerful.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So I'm and I thought that the thing with Zimmerman and the other, I don't know the other cop's name out in Missouri, what happened to them should have been a real warning to private citizens that, look, you know, if the cops, you know, if the neighborhood watch guy and then the cop can't defend themselves, well, then, you know, what kind of chance are you going to have to defend yourself? So you got to make sure you don't look for fights and you behave tactically.
Yeah. And most people have no clue. I'll just put, you know, myself out there. I've been reading your website, so I have some small clue, but it's just not part of life for a lot of us.
Well, I think that's going to change. Maybe in a generation, more people will understand aggression than our generation and my parents' generation. That was just ridiculous the way I was brought up. That you know, everybody just gets along and.
Yeah. This is still California. Northern California is still in the summer of love here. Okay, we all just get along all the time.
Well, that's good out there. You know, I'm not positioned to partake of that.
No, I mean it's just the default position of your typical middle class liberal. I overheard a conversation of two men meeting for the first time. Oh, we're both electrical engineers, and then the middle-aged one guy goes, "Peace, love, and electrical engineering, man." Like, really? Are you serious? Yeah, they're still really deep into it. All the baby boomers of in this area are just really still living on hate and Ashbury.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what. If I just had a horde of a couple of thousand mercenaries, I mean, I could go out and I could collect engineers. For
you
instance.
could conquer Silicon Valley in a day.
Yeah, just snap these guys up
in a day. Yeah. Yeah, you could conquer Google in a day. I mean, you could just you'd have the head of Sergey Brin and Larry Page on pikes out by the big rainbow Google sign, and you'd be the new CEO.
My poor world cultures teacher in 7th grade gave us this thing to do where we had to pretend that we were all marooned on an island and decide what we were going to do. And my friend Rick and I we both had a plan for how we would go off on our own and just do our own thing. And she said, "No, that can't work. People can't survive alone." And I said, "Well, there's not resources here. You have no farming skill. You have no seed. It's going to have to be hunting and gathering. And most of these people are going to die. So I don't want to be down there with them. I want to go up in the hills." She said, "No, you have to come up with a team, a team thing." So Rick and I got together and we said, "Well, who's the smartest kid?" Because we're not that smart. And we both said Jonathan Legan. Now, Jonathan was tragically killed. He was this geeky, awkward kid who was running with his pile of books trying to catch a school bus at Trinity High School, and the bus ran him over and killed him.
Oh, wow.
So I dedicated my first novel to him. And this is a guy that was just, everybody called him the smartest kid in the school. Mr. Scientific had these big Coke bottle glasses. And Rick and I we were the two biggest, strongest guys in class, and I was by far the meanest person in the whole school. Okay, so we just got together and we figured, okay, Jonathan, we're going to take Jonathan and he's going to be our scientist. He's going to figure out all this hard stuff for us. And then we just had to decide which women we want. And fortunately, Rick and I had different tastes and body types. I wanted a chick with a big butt, big boobs, okay, so I got her. He wanted the one that was built like a gymnast, okay. And then we went up to Jonathan and we said, "Jonathan, how would you like to be in our 3-man little country? And you get to pick out your girl." And there's yet another girl that we didn't even notice that he was really into. He said, "Well, I want her." So we tell the teacher that when she asked for our plan, we said, "Well, it's going to be us 3, and Jonathan's going to figure out all the engineering and everything. I'm going to kill Muncie and Shields because they were 2 football players." I said, "They're dead on the beach. First thing I'm doing is going out in the woods. I'm making a stone knife. I'm coming back. It's going right in their necks." And these guys are sitting there like, "Oh my God," because I'm talking about, I'm going to butcher them. It makes sense because these guys, they were the natural leaders. They were the alpha males. Rick and I weren't. But we could kick their asses, and everybody else is going to watch. We know that going in. And the girls were actually kind of flattered that the 2 guys that just planned on killing the rest of the people picked them as their women. And Jonathan was thrilled. This was the best day of Jonathan's life. These 2 psychopaths said, yeah, you're going to be the engineer of our little 6-person nation on this island.
It's it's like after Noah's flood, the 3 sons.
The teacher cried.
The teacher cried?
Yeah, she was in her early 30s. She cried. And I was just like, "What's the matter with this? I'm going to get to kill these 2 football players, and then I'm going to have sex with her." This is great.
In the 7th grade. Aren't you 12?
We were 13.
Oh,
okay.
Man.
So you have a bunch of kids who are prepubescent. Then you have 4 or 5 girls and 4 or 5 guys who have already gone through puberty. So that's basically Rick and me and Muncie and Shields, these 2 big meathead football players. Okay, so the rest of them are all these little people. They're going to be the subjects of the kingdom because it's going to come down to me against these 2 meatheads. And Jonathan wasn't even into puberty yet, but he liked the idea of having a woman, not that he would have what to do with her. Because, he still looked like a 10-year-old kid, but he was really brilliant. Yeah, so that was it. And then the teacher, I think she wanted to know, well, what about the other people? They didn't care about the other people. And I was like, well, some of them might live. We can come every week. We could come down to the beach and check to see if there's any survivors. And, maybe some of them, we could use them as slaves or farmers or something like that.
And now I noticed that the Khan hadn't visited you yet because you only chose 1 female.
This was true. I was, I wasn't fully matured. I wasn't fully mature at the time. I was still adolescent. I still had sentiments. I wanted to get a girlfriend and fall in love with her and marry her and have kids.
Oh, how sweet.
So that was that went by the wayside a few years later. But yeah, so to think about it, there were other candidates.
Mm-hmm.
But they could have been dragooned into the harem, but that did not occur to our innocent little minds. We just both had the one girl we really liked, and the dudes we knew we had to get rid of, and that was it.
Yeah, that's enough for one day's work, right? One day.
They'd have went down easy. Seals would have went down easy. You could just see the looks on their face. They were terrified. While the first one's knife, the other one's just going to be wetting his pants and waiting for it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I knew that going in that it was going to be easy because we'd already sorted out who the three most dangerous guys in the whole school were, and I wasn't the most dangerous one. I was number 2.
Oh.
Number 1 was this guy named Kevin Donnelly, who I believe ended up becoming a professional boxer.
Oh.
He tried to pick a fight with me, and I just knew he would absolutely murder me. So I just told him, I said, look, just beat me up. So I'm not going to back down. I'm not going to throw any punches because you're going to make me look stupid because I'm never going to hit you. Just beat me up. And that wasn't enough for him. So he ends up beating up these 2 football players, and he was smaller than me.
Wow.
Yeah, but with me, with a weapon in my hand, I've always had a whole different level of competence as a fighter as soon as I got a weapon in my hand.
I find that interesting.
It's unusual with most combat athletes. Most combat athletes are not comfortable with a weapon in their hand. And I think it's because they're physically more dominant than I was throughout my life.
Oh.
Because I started out as this little kid that got picked on. So mentally I've always sought advantage in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a good mind for that. Rick could have never killed anybody. He'd have probably apologized to these 2 guys while I was cutting their throats, but he was all for getting that cute girl.
Yeah.
He was on board. And they were both blondes too, which is unusual. I was never particularly into blondes. His self-professed ideal woman was a blonde African American gymnast.
Oh.
That's like his idea, the ideal body type. Now, he was half Polish, 1/4 Sicilian, and 1/4 Navajo. He was an interesting looking guy.
Interesting.
I thought about him. I looked at Survive to Jive, and he was explaining the similarities in Slavic facial structures to Native Americans, and they share these ancestors in northern Eurasia. And I immediately thought of Rick. Because he just had to, you look at him and it's like, is he an Indian or is he a Polack? I don't know. And when you really can't tell. When he had red hair, you could say, well, yeah, he's a Polack. But once he shaved his head, he just looks like a scary Indian. Half breed. Looks like a scary Indian. His grandfather was a very large Navajo who was a cook at Guadalcanal. He killed a Jap. When they got overrun, he killed a Jap by splitting his head in half with a meat cleaver while he was working at the kitchen. And he took pictures of the dead Jap, and he would show it to us at times, when we would ask stuff about the war. And pretty much all he ever did was show us that picture.
Wow.
But he was big. He just passed away a year and a half ago.
Oh.
Yeah. And that was, to come full circle, that was the father of Punky. That was the father of Punky.
Yeah.
And he is the woman that Uncle Crush came to visit as soon as he got to prison. Instead of going to see his girlfriend and wife, which should have been the normal protocol, he stops off to see his niece because every guy that ever met her just fell in love with her because she was a great gal. So she's still waiting tables at a restaurant in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
To see her next year.
Good.
Any other questions about brutality and acquiring soft companionship at the expense of meatheads?
No, I don't need any more advice on that topic.
Okay.
You did have one more. You did have one more note here, which was the BGF note. I think it's Black Gorilla Family.
Oh, the Black Guerrilla family is the only organization in Baltimore that has the ability to police a lot of the neighborhoods, because you've got around the clock, 24/7 presence. If they don't want somebody to get killed, they're not going to get killed, and unless a cop does it or unless it's somebody from a rival gang. And none of the rival gangs could stand up to them. No, two of the rival gangs could stand up to them.
Wow.
In fact, an alliance with the Crips for the riots. Now, I think I've stated before that Terrence White should be the next president of the United States. He was the leader of the Black Guerrilla family that knocked up 4 prison guards, got them pregnant.
Yeah.
Sex slaves, and the male prison guards were his servants. And this guy's got a kingly mentality. Okay, so I think he should be king of the United States. And his last name might satisfy some of these white nationalist people. You don't know, but at least it's an honorary mention. But this Black Guerrilla family is still in business. The last big drug sweep targeted 34 or 35 of these people from this one gang. And it seems to be the only gang that the authorities care about, and they're the biggest gang. Well, the more damage you do to this big gang, the more turf wars there are going to be with these tiny sets that splinter off or that might crop up in the vacuum. So it doesn't do anything to even solve that type of violence that they're trying to address, because they're going after the only gang that's got any management capacity. The other gangs are just groups of 5. You know, the FBI one year said there's 210 gangs in Baltimore. Well, half those gangs don't make the year.
Yeah.
Because it's one guy surrounded by his 3 or 4 buddies, and one of them gets whacked, and it's pretty much it. Or 2 of them gets locked up, it's done, and they coalesce and they go into other groups. So you got this one gang that's actually got some type of ability to manage the situation and put a lid on some of the violence, and they're the target of the police. Okay, not all these little gangs, because not because the police, I think, are evil in this regard. They're just practically going after the biggest, most conventional target.
All right.
And
it's like the ISIS of Baltimore.
Yeah. So that gang is still there.
Yeah.
I mean, the feds have come down on them. This task force, 20-person task force, has mostly looked at them. They're still there.
Well, I wanted to ask you, you wrote about how after the Freddie Gray riots, they got so much opiates into the system that the overdose deaths just spiked in the following year. Is that still, do you think that supply is still working through?
Okay, that's fentanyl.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what they got, all this pharmaceutical fentanyl.
Yeah.
And it's apparently still out there.
Yeah.
Now, I know there's so many ways of getting this stuff that it's going to get here anyhow, but Baltimore seems to be the cheapest place to get this stuff, and it's plentiful enough that you're getting more of this stuff laced into the heroin.
Oh. And
our deaths have gone up. I think some states are worse. Ohio might be worse than Maryland, but I think our heroin deaths have doubled since this happened, and a lot of it has to do with just shoot up once, bam, and you're dead.
Right.
Because of this fentanyl that's in this. It's not something I know much about, but that I heard a couple guys on the bus talking about it, the mother lode, and it might be an urban legend. And their police did in 2016 make a huge bust. It was the biggest drug bust I think that was ever made in Maryland. And they stated that this was a supply that had been brought in during the riots, or maybe it was the guys on the bus that were saying it had been brought in during the riots. I just ended up of the impression that it had been brought in at that time. There's no way you're not talking about one stash. The mother lode's like this mythical thing.
Yeah.
You really got every half mile you got a stash house.
Right.
This stuff's all over the place. And most of these neighborhoods are places where the cops still couldn't go into them without a tactical squad a year and a half ago.
Wow.
And they have, you can't go into one of these side streets like in the Baltimore Community Action neighborhood. That's a great name for a neighborhood. You can't go into one of those side streets and take some guy down and make an arrest unless you got a whole lot of backup. 2, 3, 4, 5 cops can't do it.
Wow.
Okay, so there's a lot of things going on in these neighborhoods that the cops really don't have a handle on. They have limited intelligence. When Charles and I did the Baltimore Travel Guide, any street that we hadn't been on recently, we went down every single street in Baltimore City with a Google Earth car.
Wow.
And there's some neighborhoods where every third block you could see through the Google Earth car lens an obvious stash house.
Yeah.
That's got this gate slapped on the front door, that's got bars on the windows on the third story, that's got middle-aged black dudes just hanging out on the porch in the middle of the day. So who knows how much of this stuff is just stashed in Baltimore.
Yeah.
There are 1 or 2 big drug busts a year. They're probably just skimming a little bit off the top because it's still a place where stoner rich kids from Harford County are moving 30 or 40 miles to get to Baltimore and live like hobos on the street or pile up in an efficiency and prostitute their girlfriends out so that they can get all this cheap heroin.
Yeah.
So you actually have like these kind of pseudo-married couples, cute little couples from deep in the suburbs moving into Baltimore to be dope fiend homesteaders.
All right.
She's going to be a prostitute and, maybe him too these days. I don't know. But I've seen too much of the situations where you have one teenage girl, walking down a side street with 4 or 5 men who are not of her same group, and what that's about. She's going to earn some drugs for her boyfriend, and in the meantime, some of these people are getting money sent to them from their upper middle class parents.
Yeah.
And cash checks at the local supermarkets. So there's got to be something, because it's not the environment, because it's a dangerous environment. There's got to be a supply that's here, that's cheaper and or more accessible than what's out in central Maryland or northern or western Maryland.
All right.
Oh, speaking of which, in case you didn't get the news, only half of Maryland students have passed their basic reading and math tests.
Yeah.
Okay. But when you look at the numbers, it's only 15% of the kids in Baltimore City can pass the basic reading test, basic literacy, and only 11% can pass the math test. And you've got to realize that this is probably the same 11%.
Yeah. Because the reporter can't pass the math test either.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So this bodes well for the business we were just discussing. They're going to have plenty of demand and plenty of available labor based on these test scores.
Geez.
The best is yet to come. You heard it here.
Oh. All right. Well, shall we call it on that sad note?
Oh, I thought it was a note of uplift. So let's call it on that uplifting note.
On an uplifting note.
The drug culture is just heating up.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
It's really awful. Okay. Thanks, James. And we will. This is episode 8 for those keeping track at home. I will someday put it up on the internet, and then you'll listen.
Okay. Thank you.